You can only hurt somebody so much, and their brain, the implicit and implicit part of our brain, will go, I'm done. Well, let's go even further back than that.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, let's look at John Gottman's work, The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and we're looking at stonewalling, defensiveness, criticism, or contempt. Men might walk away, but where do they walk away to? What is out there for them? It's huge. You know, we need men to roar. We mustn't be scared of that. I'm not talking about violence at all. I'm talking about being able to. So what I wanted to talk about was how.
Hold on. Let me do an intro.
Oh.
Do you know this is my therapy pillow?
No, why?
I've in the last year and a half.
Okay.
It's like a safety blanket. It's a therapy pillow.
Can we do a podcast on what's the matter with you?
Yeah. I haven't got enough time for that. Yeah. So hi and welcome to the Paradox of Change, a podcast dedicated to mental health and well-being, founded by three practitioners with the sole purpose of inspiring people to talk. Today, hi Lottie.
Hi.
My beautiful guest and co-host and co-founder Lottie is joining us in our studio in Oxford. Now, we just went out for a quick drive.
We did.
And you have an idea and you want to kick it off, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, I want to talk about defensiveness.
You can't make me.
In the car, I was just thinking to myself, I'm seeing a lot of couples at the moment, and actually defensiveness is such high on the agenda with them. And actually they're not even noticing they're doing it. So things can be dismissed or put to one side.
That's what I was going to ask you. Before we start making assumptions of what defensiveness is, from your perspective as a couples counsellor, can you name some of the defensive behaviours that you might experience?
Well, let's go even further back than that.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, let's look at John Gottman's work, The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and we're looking at stonewalling, defensiveness, criticism, or contempt.
Right.
So defensiveness is, I don't want to be blamed or shamed. I don't want it to actually be my fault. So we will attack instead of going, tell me more.
Are all defensive natures in that respect attack, or can they be seen as something different?
Well, it comes from a place of I'm going to be blamed, or there's an injustice. Something's going to something's coming to it. So if you think of yourself as a child and you're getting blamed for something, there will be part of you that doesn't want to get blamed, and you might have actually done something wrong. So my analogy is always, I've not touched the chocolate cake with half a ton of chocolate around your mouth, and it was you, but you don't want to be blamed. There's something about not being in trouble. But as an adult, we start to use that defensiveness in adult from child to actually not sit in that really uncomfortable guilt place.
It worked great when we were 4 or 5. Yeah. Doesn't work when we're a grown up.
Doesn't work now. No, absolutely not. So that's one aspect of it. Then we've got stonewalling. Stonewalling, sometimes people see as you don't care. Just don't care about the relationship, or you don't care about me. Stonewalling actually is flooding. I'm being overwhelmed by what I'm hearing or feeling, so I need to walk away.
Right, let's break that down quickly, because I'm just thinking about my understanding of it. Stonewalling can be effectively seen as a complete withdrawal of any emotional connection of any way, shape or form. But it's not because they're narcissistic or they're being evil or they're being manipulative, but it can be too much to bear.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or you can have somebody who stonewalls because actually they've come from a place of when they were a child, they were very sulky and they shut down completely to protect themselves. And that would happen now within the relationship. They would sulk for days.
Yeah. I don't like the word sulk. But there's an immaturity to self. It's an immature version of self-soothing.
It is, but I suppose whatever way you look at it, what we're trying to get couples to do is actually think, let's prep before we do any of these behaviours. So if you're hurting me and I get overwhelmed, I'm telling you now that I will walk off, but I'm not being rude. I'm just overwhelmed with everything that's going on. So if that's happening, if you prep the couple or the individual to say, I'm going to go. You know what I'm like? I use the word pineapple or pillow, because if something's happening, we haven't got the vocabulary when we're stonewalling. We're overwhelmed, so we haven't got the capacity at that time when we're flooded to actually say what we really mean.
You're also describing elements of fear.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's the fight or flight, isn't it?
Yeah,
sure.
I can't handle the conversation. I can't handle my assumptions of where this conversation could go, or I'm in fear of being persecuted or vilified,
Yeah.
or punished.
Yeah. And I suppose if you haven't had a template of any conflict happening within a relationship at home when you were smaller, we're looking for helping individuals and couples to come from a place of conflict is growth trying to happen in your relationship. When you were younger, maybe conflict wasn't about growth. It was about put up and shut up.
Deal with it.
Yeah. Get on with it. Yeah. This is what we do. And don't forget, a lot of couples say to me, back then they were smacked. Nowadays you're not allowed to, so there would be a different way of being. And what we're trying to do, that intergenerational trauma, we're trying to change. So what you had, and if it wasn't good, we don't really want to mirror that in the relationship that we have with ourselves or our children now.
I think there could be an entirely lengthy episode on generational trauma alone.
Oh, absolutely.
How many people even know that there is choice? There is a different way of doing things.
Yeah.
It's just the norm, isn't it, that you've been brought up a particular way, and that's the way it is.
Yeah. And we soak it in. You think about some sort of 0 to 5 years old, we are soaking our environment in massively.
So you were talking about the different types of behaviour, stonewalling being one of them.
Yeah. So defensiveness, we've got stonewalling, and then we've got criticism. So if we've got a couple who are criticising each other, we've gone to a parent mode. So defensiveness and stonewalling are child traits, and criticism is an adult parent state. So you've either got somebody who's going, you always do the same thing. I've told you before. There's sort of that waggly finger feeling you get when you were being told off as a child.
Would you think it's a good time to introduce the concept of parent, adult, child behaviours?
Absolutely, the TA model for sure. Yeah, transactional analysis. Being able to do.
I just call it TA because I can never say it.
I say it slowly, but it's really important to actually introduce that and try and stay. So there's parent, adult, child, and get them to stay in adult and start noticing them to start noticing and become aware of when they go to either P or C.
Okay. For those who might not know, and I'm grinning because I can't believe I'm about to say this, but could we role play what? Maybe we won't role play. We'll give some examples of an example of how someone might respond as adult and or child from a critical parent's perspective. Because when we say critical parent, and I think about this when I'm doing client work, I say critical parent, and sometimes I've noticed with the client, they think, well, my parent wasn't critical. It's like, no. It's not how you've been brought up, critical parent. It's the attitude of the behaviors within your relationship. So you're being treated like you had a critical parent in the room, and you can either stay adult, or you can be critical too, or you can switch to childlike. So can you think of some examples from a relationship perspective?
I can think of not so good examples.
Okay.
So if we come from a place of, we won't role play it, but I'll just say it. Like if I said to you as a partner, I wonder whether we could have a conversation. Go, what's happened now? What have I done now?
Oh, I see. So that's going into the child.
Yeah. Well, they're coming from a place of victim. So what have I done now? Okay. But what they're not doing is going, let me ask you what's going on for you. So they've gone into an I.
Yeah.
And they're not seeing the other person's perspective of, I would like to have a chat with you about something. They've gone straight back into I. So I get couples to really hear the language, because, when you're talking about a conversation, we're talking about the we. Okay. So it's from a perspective of, I would like to talk to you about us. Yeah. So I'm hoping the other person will say something like, okay, what's going on for you? What do you need to talk about? But they don't. They go into a defensive mode, like, well, what have I done? So that's defensive and child.
I just had a bit of a thought. Think about experiences I've had with client work. You can also have the critical parent, but it can be really well disguised as stroke and stab. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you've mentioned that saying before, stroke and stab. Yeah, well, I guess that's some passive aggressive behaviour, isn't it? When we look at that,
it's the stab I was thinking about. Is sometimes because it was delivered in a nice way, and then it's like, oh, you look really good in that outfit. Did you fit into that skirt then? It's probably not a very good example, but you take it as something okay, but you can't quite put your finger on the nuance of the critique, the stab side of it. But I think what you were talking about earlier is, if in a situation of critical, we need to sit down. I'd like to have a conversation about something I'm uncomfortable with. Now, what have I done? That's more, I think you've established the adult asking the other party for a quality conversation, and it wasn't met.
Where do they go? Yeah,
where do they
you've
go?
got to actually stay, both of you, in adult to be able to have a mature conversation. Otherwise, it just goes all over the place when the other person's either being too childish. Some clients, there will be a difficult conversation, they grin and they don't know what to do because they've not had experience. That their template is very different. They would have done that as a child in some way, shape, form, and that can be sarcastic. That can feel very patronizing. So when we're looking at the 4 horsemen, we are looking for that either defensiveness or that critical process that goes on. And either of them will get you to be more attacking towards.
I think we covered the 4th behaviour. What was that?
It's contempt.
This is the one that I think is the most insidious, because I can't imagine for some people how you recover from having such contempt for someone, or being on the receiving end of such contempt, almost the loathing of somebody.
Yeah, it's actually the place you go that I actually hate my partner. And it depends on when they come to therapy, whether you can actually regain some of that back. If it's gone too far, it's very, very difficult. But for me, when I'm talking to them as individuals, I say to them, who have you become whilst in this relationship? So as much as you don't like them, what's happened to you as an individual to then say, all these feelings I have and all this venom that I'm pouring out, and who have you become? Who are you? Because you don't recognize yourself when you go into contempt. You've actually become somebody really, really horrible. And you have to, I feel as a therapist, I have to say, who are you becoming? Because all I'm doing then is talking about why you're being horrible to that person.
The way you're describing it, how it popped up in my mind's eye was the contempt could almost be the contempt for yourself for losing the person that you were.
It can be, but when we talk about, mirror neurons and mirroring each other, what has happened between the relationship that you're seeing something that you don't want to see, so you're criticizing it. It might be you see yourself. So it's a very complex thing. This is actually trying to work out who you've become in a relationship. And I think that's a powerful statement. Who have I become whilst I'm with you? Because every relationship is different. You will act differently in every single relationship in some way, shape or form, because you're being greeted by somebody else that's different.
A form of projection then, almost, in some cases.
Can be, yeah.
Which is the biggest giveaway.
Yeah.
Without even knowing it.
Well, I guess you meet people because you are mirroring each other. You see each other for the family of origin process, because that's the familiar, and then you stay with them because they're different. So if you've got an extrovert and an introvert, they might get together and think, right, okay, I love this person. They're so out there and I was always so quiet. There'll be something about them that will take you on that journey of difference. And that's what keeps people together.
I owned that then for a second. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. But that's what Esther talks about, is aliveness. When we're talking about that difference, that's the aliveness that's actually happening between both of you. There's a part of me that sees you for who you are and the mirror of me. But there's another part of me that wants to get away from that. I don't want to be in family of origin anymore, in the fact that how I was treated or how I felt that I was treated. So that's their story of it. And we don't dismiss any of that. It's all relevant. But the other thing to this is conflict is growth trying to happen. So when we've got the 4 processes of John Gottman going on, some of that is growth trying to happen. If there is arguments going on, I'm happy because there is energy within that relationship.
And it's almost a prerequisite that these people want to fight for something.
Well, if they're fighting with each other, they want to fight for something. And that's when we look at the relationship styles. The conflict styles, we look at them as that would be competing. You're both wanting to get your story across. You're both wanting to be right. We cannot stay at that stance. I'm going to win and you're going to win. No one's going to win, because you're just going to be so stubborn. You will never have a full conversation. It'll be story, story, story.
It's interesting. The relationship with the word argument has changed immensely for me over the years. And I think, as you were just outlining there, I encourage argument, but I have a different relationship with argument. I'm keen to learn about the grey areas. I'm not in it to win it. I'm in it for growth. I'm in it for the opportunity to find out where I've got some gaps. And I will. And Jordan Peterson said it in a short, I think it was an Instagram reel that I saw years ago, but he mentioned about trying to help the other person argue. Just because you might be articulated and you can say all these fancy words and diminish their value of what the other person's trying to say. What you should be is utilizing your skills and your values and helping that other person argue. It's not about winning. What does it say about you about winning? But I guess if you're in a relationship where that contempt has set in for such a long time,
and that's
you get blinded, don't you?
Absolutely. And when I say to my clients, I'm going to look at you as an I, not a we at the moment. Let's look at you as what the differentiated you is. I am an I, and I've got passion and adventure and eroticism and fantasies and all the big list that we do. That's who you are first, choosing to be with this person. So the ruptures that are happening within it are the energy that actually is getting you to think of the conflict that's saying to you, something's got to shift, something's got to move, because this isn't working as it is.
Do you think some of that can be attributed to just the very nature that, every 5-10 years, there's kind of a new version of us evolving into someone different?
Totally. Absolutely. Totally. And I think everybody should have an MOT once a year. How are you? How am I? How are we getting on? What do you like? What don't you like? I think that's...
But it's a bit like, investing in your vehicle, but you're investing in your personal vehicle as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's paramount. And when I look at the Tony Robbins work, I absolutely adore Tony Robbins. If you get a chance for him to come to England again on his 4-day bonanza, please go on it. It was incredible. But he talks about the relationship creed. He talks about safety. So if you look at it as an I first instead of a we, as a partnership, safety, spontaneity, significance, love and connection.
You have remembered these, haven't you?
And contribution, because I absolutely adore him. And I go to my clients, have you got that as an individual? Have you got those attributes as an individual first? And then as a couple, usually, because some of them are primal and some of them are spiritual. And we need to look to see which ones are missing. We're looking for the deficit, not the gain. So usually people have got 2 that work really well, and then the rest of them are quite sort of behind. And that's what I want them to think about. How, couples say to me, I want to be loved. And the first question I say to them is, how loving are you?
Yeah. Be who you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if they're not loving, but they're expecting somebody to be loving, but actually they're quite critical, no one's going to come towards them at all. So for me, the John Gottman behavior stuff is paramount to how we're working for ourselves and for couples. Who are you being as an I and as a we? I'm fascinated with all of that, because we just sink into a relationship and we become who we don't want to become. Then
is there a complacency that creeps in?
Ambivalence.
Ambivalence.
Yeah, I call it ambivalence that creeps in. That we've got each other, and
we did it. We made it. Now we don't have to try anymore.
Yeah, but that's what's so interesting about couples is when they get to quite a longevity between sort of 15 and 20 years, they look at each other and they go, perfunctory and practical, all of it. We're fabulous, built our empire, got everything. But actually, what happens is they have no emotional connection. And as you get older, it's not are you the one? It's are you my person when I'm needing you the most, through menopause, through andropause, as I go on for men.
And I know you've explained this to me not that long ago. It's the male menopause.
It is.
For guys that are listening to this that have no idea what that was, and neither did I until a little while ago when you told me.
Yeah.
Andropause.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is the difference between menopause and andropause? I know that we're so when a man loves a woman,
yeah.
I understand that difference. Yeah. But what happens to a guy in that andropause?
Well, if we just look at the chemicals, it's estrogen and testosterone levels decrease, and there is significant changes. For men, it's muscle mass loss, hair loss, and that's not just in that Try not to look at your head.
I know, it's so difficult. It's kind of,
Um,
it's the elephant in the room.
But yeah, sometimes erectile dysfunction, there's things that actually happen. There's a difference that's going on that nobody really recognises or talks about. But saying that though, medically, men are more investigated than women, and actually menopause isn't talked about as much. It is so much now, but again, it's gone off the radar slightly. But we both male and female have a radar of something, of a deficiency as we go through our life. And think about it, it's normal. We're young, then we get older. Things are going to change, but it has such an effect on where you are in personally and individually and together with someone.
Well, both of those states, andropause and menopause, are going to affect the individual significantly, but it's going to affect the relationship significantly.
Of course, yeah.
And then you've got the third element, which I should imagine is if that happens at different stages whilst they're together.
Of course, absolutely, yeah. Yeah. And I would say 2 brains, 2 opinions. Don't think that you know what your partner's thinking and what their opinion is.
Isn't that a failing of most relationships, the second guessing and guesswork of what the other person either should or shouldn't be doing or what they're thinking?
But that's about communication. If they're not sharing it, then you just make it up and then make an assumption and make the own story up because you're not getting anything back. So it's got to be said, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'd like.
It's interesting you're talking about good quality communication. What is that? Because I have my views. I guess one of those is not just talking about what you might be frustrated about or what's going on for you, but we do have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I think it's a wise concept to be using them in that ratio. It's listening skills as well. So communication is not just about being brave enough to say something at the fear of or at the risk of being persecuted or vilified, but also being able to listen to it and hold it without being affected negatively or feeling threatened. Well, we were talking about this at the beginning of the cast.
But I think it's if you personalize it. If your partner's saying, I feel lonely, I feel upset when, and the person says, oh my God, I took you out last week. What more do you want? And actually, we're going out this Saturday, we're going to a friend's party. What's happened there is complete dismissal of somebody else's feelings.
I think that's a big thing.
It's huge.
And probably most don't even realise that they are cutting someone down without even realising.
But if you actually go back to Tony Robbins, do you feel safe in this relationship? Because you can't get heard. So what's happening there? Safety is the number one, because if you're not safe, you can't be funny. And if you're not safe, you can't feel significant. So it all leads, one of those leads into all of them. So yeah, we've got to be careful. And don't forget, we might have heard this rhetoric again and again. You say that all the time about being lonely. Go and get some friends. Stop sitting indoors all the time. Why are you waiting for me?
Put a smile on your face.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to the shops.
Yeah, there will be something that's said, but it will come round. It's cyclical, isn't it? It will come back round again because it's not being heard. It will always come back.
But it will come back different.
The story is the same. The context is made up of different language, so it sounds like it's different. The same as resentments. People have resentments that don't get heard, and then they just package it up differently. It's the same resentment, just different story.
I can't remember which bit we were touching upon at the beginning of our recording, but we were touching on TA, transitional analysis, and adult, critical parent and child. I can't remember where I've read it, but there is in one of my TA books about collecting postage stamps.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how much that can relate to the contempt. And for those that don't know what that is, there's, if you imagine being in a loving relationship and your partner does something that upsets you, but you kind of let it slide. And it seems to be something that men find easier just to kind of ignore and brush over. In my experience, women might hold on to those postage stamps because another bad thing happens, another thing upsets them, and it goes over the course of time. But one day you get delivered the entire letter of everything you ever did wrong. And I think I hear that in therapy work where some guys are not capable and able to articulate themselves when that happens, and then very much go into childlike mode because they don't have the armory to deal with it.
I think for me, my experience with couples is that women have explosions every now and then. So they hold it all, and then the men usually have explosions, and they're at the end and they leave.
That's dumb.
Yeah, because they're holding that place. They're holding that place of love. They're trying to be okay. Sometimes walking on eggshells, maybe, and that's no different for the woman as well. If it's a cis relationship, however, they're both holding some resentment, and they're usually like 15 years ago when you didn't turn up when I was having a baby, or actually when I got promotion, when I come home you didn't listen to me when I was telling you about it, and it was good for both of us. There will be resentments that are held, and they're swallowed. And if you think of rage, so that actually is swallowed as a child, we're just adding to that rage page. And to me, these explosions are part of that rage process.
Mm.
We don't say it. I would love it if people did the ouch moment every now and then, go, actually, when you just said that yesterday, that really hurt my feelings. And I want the other person to go, tell me more, be curious about what's going on, because that's something that people swallow, and they will bring it up probably about, I don't know, every 3 years. A big explosion. My experience with men is they have a massive explosion. They go, I'm not going to be hurt anymore. I'm done. Yeah. And I see that in my therapy room many times. Men come in and they go, I'm not doing this anymore. And actually the women don't realize that. They go, well, we're here because we're going to try. And they go, no,
when did this happen?
Yeah. You can only hurt somebody so much, and their brain, the implicit and implicit part of our brain, will go, I'm done. Mm-hmm. Don't take it for granted that somebody will continue on this journey of pain. We as human beings, we have a lifetime of pain. It could be a multitude of whatever it might be.
From different angles.
Absolutely, not just from partnerships, but actually we don't want to stay in it. The power struggle is to go in it, sort it out, and come out of it.
I'm hearing a key ingredient.
What are you hearing?
There is a key ingredient of lack of empathy. And if it's something that we can call upon with the people that we care about, we can take the potential criticism out of the equation.
And I think it's empathy and intimacy.
Okay, if we're going to go into intimacy, do you feel intimacy is different for men and women?
Yes. Well, I say yes. I think they both want the same. Men talk about sex a lot, but actually what they want is affection. They want to be seen and be noticed. That's no different from a woman.
So you asked me earlier, the question was, I'm trying to recall it, but I felt like it might be poignant. It was, what do men need? No, you asked me, what do men need to feel loved? Yeah. What was your question?
Well, it was to do with on Tuesday, the podcast, and it's about men, part one, love and affection. What do they want?
And I said, well, the first thing that came to mind is how men become stronger when they're respected.
Yeah.
They feel masculine when they're respected. Everything else is still important. Being loved, being desired, all of those things are really high, but respected is definitely one of those elements where they feel safe in their role, I think.
Yeah. And your point is valid, coming from a male perspective. I think that's really valid, to be respected, to be heard. You know, I talk to my clients sometimes about magical marriages where the one person who's not really separated from the family role and is very much involved in their family of origin, and that's fine, but actually they go to their father to say, what colour car should we buy, or you could do the MOT, Dad, or anything, and the partner of that person will be saying, but I can do all that. I can actually, paint the room, or I can go and get your car MOT. So we need to be careful of where the dynamic of the protectiveness, maybe, of looking after your partner, or that respect coming in and being listened to, and nobody's second question, nobody going, I know you'll look after, I know you'll drive safely, I know you'll be there for me. It's an interesting concept, isn't it?
It is.
But that's the first thing you said, which was interesting. It would be from a frame of, I want to be respected.
And I also know that can come from a place of my previous relationships, not necessarily something that all men desire or require. But I think I've worked with men long enough now that I can hear that thread that runs through just being spoken to as if I'm respected or trusted of my opinions and what I can do and my value. So that's the thing that came up for me.
I was having a conversation the other day. You know, we say to boys in school, you know, stick up for yourself, and if anybody hits you, hit them back, and you know, don't be bullied, and you know, you're really strong. And that when they get to adults, they're gone, can you not be so aggressive?
Not allowed to do that now.
You're actually scaring me now. And that rawness, I really believe that rawness of a guy has to come out somewhere. And I'm sure that's why so many of the groups have started up, like Mankind and all these different groups, because men have such a rawness about them.
Is it the men's shed in Australia, I think it is?
And in Southampton, it's in England now. But if you attach sex to that as well, it's huge. You know, we need men to roar. We mustn't be scared of that. I'm not talking about violence at all. I'm talking about being able to have your ego on the inside, but your masculinity on the outside. Being able to say to yourself, you know, I am a man, and I'm sitting in this place of wanting respect, wanting love, wanting affection, wanting this, wanting that. It's the language that comes across from men, I think, that gets complicated. Because you guys will say, so I've seen it in my therapy, you'll say, I want sex. That's not appealing. A woman does not warm up when you say, I want sex.
Speak for yourself.
So, in a relationship that's having trouble. So we've got to change the language, and intimacy is the way forward to actually become more intimate. But if you're rowing with each other, there isn't any intimacy and lack of communication.
I heard intimacy described as vulnerability. So a man that feels completely safe with his partner, that he can have sex with, but he can be vulnerable with, and then allow that softness where it's not going to be used against him, was really quite profound, because that's that vulnerability to allow someone close enough to actually see you is a big thing.
It is a big thing.
And I think where a lot of men and their outwardly courageous, strong natures, once that trust has been betrayed, there is no second chance.
Right.
They're done. And I think it's such a shame, because there's growth on both parties to kind of revisit that.
And I think guilt is one thing that we hold, and we do that to ourselves, but when someone's shamed, it's something that's being given to us.
Well, you taught me something years ago. So when I was sorry, we're going off on a bit of a tangent, but it's all good. So you taught me something years ago when we worked at the homeless shelter in Winchester. So I was still practicing at Eastleigh or Southampton. And there was that genuine question, why do guys, well, anyone homeless, doesn't really matter, but it seems to be there's more homeless men than there is homeless women. But what keeps them on the street? You know, they could do this. They could go to the homeless shelter. They could go through a process of getting themselves back on their feet. There's charities and organisations and councils all there ready to support them. And you just very quickly outlined shame, Elliot. Just shame is keeping them on the streets. The reason why they don't go to the homeless shelter in the evening is a shame. They're there because they feel like they're not worthy of anything else.
And that really tough gig when I was working there, because they would turn up with absolutely nothing, not even a toothbrush. So wherever they come from, they just had to leave. You know, and that's another subject in itself, how society can be set up for women, because they can get all the benefits with the children. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but actually there isn't that for men, which obviously you and I have talked about in depth before. So there's that's a whole new subject. Men might walk away, but where do they walk away to? What is out there for them?
Solitary.
Can be, yeah. And, you know, I'm sure there are some guys who have mates and everything, and we talk about this, that and the other, but in-depth conversations, more so now there is, but before there wasn't in-depth conversations, not like they need now.
So our show that we recorded earlier on, we talked about our relationship. We've been best friends for 14 or so years now.
Yeah.
I think I learnt vulnerability and the value of being open, regardless of what you might think of me, knowing that I've got that trust. And we said it in the last recording, I wish everyone had the opportunity to have that kind of relationship, but it can be found in counselling, which for probably men seeking help, that's one of the things that I would recommend, is being vulnerable, being brave, trying to find a therapist that you can be wholly soul yourself is paramount.
Yeah, and that's why I refer the guys to you, because when they're sitting in the room, the women have, like we were talking earlier, the F word, a friendship group. They have their friendship groups. Their friendship groups know exactly what's happening for them, with them.
They've got that network, haven't they?
We've got that network, and our friends want to hear it, and they're biased. They go, do this or do that, but we still want to say those things to them. Whereas the guys in the counselling room look lost, absolutely lost. Shall I share it with my best mate? Sometimes they've got a best mate. Sometimes they have, but they don't share it. So that's why I said, because they look lost. That's why I send them to you.
I'm glad you do. I love the work that we do. So we started off with the four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Wow.
Went off on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's all relevant. But we're talking about those contempt, stonewalling.
Stonewalling, contempt, defensiveness, and criticism.
So in the hope of people having listened to our cast today, it's an opportunity to kind of engage with perhaps some of the things that we might do. I still do, none of us are infallible, but it gives us an opportunity to kind of recognize the part we have to play in our relationship.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
and I also like the concept of not shutting people down, because being critical with someone, male, whoever your partner is, male or female, being critical can also shut someone down, which I could only assume is a bit like pulling the spring back. It's only going to fire later on. All you're doing is you're pushing back the inevitable.
Yeah. And don't forget, the person who's doing those traits, which is usually both, but if one person's doing more, they're hurting too, because they've come from a place that's been done to them. So they're just following the script and doing it to their partner now.
History repeating itself.
Absolutely. So they might not even be, I'm just saying, I think our life could be better if only they would do this. That's their version of the life they think they should have. What's the partner's version of the life that they think they should have? So we've got to ask both of them.
What's the key takeaways then from today, do you think, of our chat?
Well, the key takeaway is print off John Gottman's 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse and actually look at it and see if you're doing any of those behaviours. And if you are, you need to minimise them, because actually they're quite destructive. Even the defensiveness, if it's too volatile, it's too up there, all of them need to go down slightly so that you can actually have a conversation, because every time they're there, conversation just goes away.
My takeaway, I think, is invest in empathy, communication, and communication skills start with an I. So we have to kind of own that before we can invest those quality conversations and in a position where we can be heard.
Yeah. And I really like, please stay curious. Always ask the next question. Why are you feeling like that? Where has that come from? Don't just shut it down or go, oh, right, okay. Say the lovely sentence, what do you need from me? I love that sentence so much. It's so gorgeous. But also think about empathy and intimacy together. It's emotional intelligence. We need more of that in relationships, being emotionally attached to each other in different.
Okay.
Good.
On that note then, until our next show, we'll record that in a few weeks. But thanks, Lossie, it was awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Ella.
It's easy for you to say. You can say that again if you like.
Thank you, Elliot. See you next time.
See you soon.